week I started on the Mercer journey, and we had some technical difficulties, and we were all shut off. So I was only speaking probably about a minute and a half. So I will continue part where I finished last time. But Mr. Speaker, first I want to.
You can continue at the beginning. Go right ahead.
Yes, thank you. That's what I meant to say. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First, Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank Victoria Pearman, the soon-to-be outgoing ombudsman, who has served her maximum term as the ombudsman for 8 years. She's seen 8 quick years. I don't know what 8 slow years are, but it seemed like 8 quick years. And Vicky has done a marvelous job, fantastic job. She's done, it seems like everything she does very well, even as she marshals the courtrooms in this country. So hopefully she'll come back into private practice, Mr. Speaker. But Mr. Speaker, I'm a bit taken back because what I'm told is that the chief occupant on the largest house in Langton Hill, wants to appoint a former police commissioner as the ombudsman, Mr. Speaker. And I find it a bit concerning to me because, Mr. Speaker, if you look at the history of Government House, I would venture to say that 70% of the appointees that come under their charge are people are white, Mr. Speaker. And so I'm a little concerned about that because I do know, I've been told by sources outside the government that between 12 and 14 applying for this job, Mr. Speaker. And so I get concerned there, Mr. Speaker, particularly when we are hurling, when I say we, the chief occupant is hurling up of appointing the police commissioner. We have an acting police commissioner, in my opinion, is doing a great job, well qualified for the job. Why it seems that when people of color is applying or are in line for a job, they seemingly have to go through an apprenticeship scheme before they can be finally appointed, Mr. Speaker. And this is concerning to me, Mr. Speaker. Back to the proposed appointment of a former police commissioner. This is the same police commissioner that under his charge are people who were peacefully protesting on December the 2nd, 2016, were pepper sprayed with chemical weapons. And most of these people, Mr. Speaker, were seniors, Mr. Speaker. Why would the chief occupant, even though they weren't there, want to appoint somebody like this here to be the ombudsman, Mr. Speaker, particularly when we have our inmates that are incarcerated. Sometimes they write to the ombudsman about their concerns or some issues they may have. You think they'll be confident in writing to an ex-police commissioner who comes from a culture that systematically targets blacks in particular for prosecution and they're in jail, Mr. Speaker? Particularly when you look at our prisons, at least 99% of our inmates are people of color. But no one can dispute the culture that these folks come from because they target black folks, Mr. Speaker. And no one can tell me that only black folks do wrong, because if you visit our prisons and you see 99% at least of the inmates are black, you would think that only black people commit crime, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, and the other thing is, Mr. Speaker, not so long ago, a young lady who was driving with children in the car was stopped by the police. And I think the windows in her car was tinted, too dark. But what happened after that really, really annoyed me when they took the car from the lady with the children and put them on the streets, and they had to find their way home. Mr. Speaker, some years ago, we changed the name from police force to a police service. Now, a police service won't do that. They won't do that. And I guess what they'll tell me is that the driver of the car was driving a car that shouldn't be on the road. Well, because you may be right under the law, it doesn't mean you shouldn't have a heart. They could have made sure the lady got home, whether they took her themselves or let her drive them, then took the car. No, they put her on the streets with the children. That's a police force. That's the culture that these folks come from. And this is the same culture that broke into the Browndale Clinic down by John Smith Beach. Broke in there, covered the cameras up, Mr. Speaker. And you know what they call that in our day, I think they call it today, breaking and entering. They broke and entered, and they probably stole. Because why would they cover up the cameras, Mr. Speaker? Mr. Speaker, I think you can remember, many of us should remember that last year, a policeman was dismissed from the police force for turning off their cameras. And the policeman appealed, went through the court process and appealed to the Supreme Court. The determination was upheld. Okay, that's fine. This policeman was dismissed, approved by the courts, yet policemen can go down Browndale Clinic, break into an office, conceal the cameras, and no charges have been laid against them. See, this is the culture. This is the culture that the chief occupant wants to put as the next and bottom, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at the laws in this country, the laws that have been made, as you know, Mr. Speaker, that in, I think was up until the 68, maybe, the chief occupant of the largest house on Lincoln Hill had an election. So they were there approving all these draconian laws that mainly pertain to black folks. Racist policies like policemen could only get a job as far as a certain rank in the police force. Certain jobs are prohibited to blacks. The payment, the income disparity was approved, Mr. Speaker. It's the same culture system that prosecuted and jailed Reverend Monk, who was helping workers in Dockyard in 1902. They come from the same culture, Mr. Speaker. And then we had the chief occupant of the largest house on Lincoln Hill supported the deal to give away our airport to ACOM, Mr. Speaker. Instead of the chief occupant directing the government of the day to London to get the funds to do the airport, they approved this deal with another government agency, not a government agency, but ACON from Canada, Mr. Speaker. And then what they went on to do, and all endorsed by the chief occupant, they signed an agreement that guarantees the revenue, the minimum revenue at the airport, Mr. Speaker. So far, it's cost us just over $40 million, over $3 million a month, Mr. Speaker. And this is as at September 30, or 30, how many days in September of 2021. So another bill, I'm sure, is on its way to Minister Scott, Mr. Speaker. This record by Government House, Mr. Speaker, this is the same folks that the chief occupant initiated the investigation of Dr. Brown. But, Mr. Speaker, they never initiated any investigation of an attorney general of the previous government who threaded papers, government papers, to also obtain information illegally. There was no investigation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Mr. Speaker, we had a former accountant general receive stolen police files. There was no investigation initiated by government house, Mr. Speaker. This what they done, Mr. Speaker. I tell you, the record of that largest house on Langton Hill, it would be shameful to Buckingham Palace. Because a lot of times people think Buckingham Palace knows about all this here. They don't. They don't even know what's going on down here as far as that's concerned. And you know, they put laws in place in this country, endorsed by the FCO representative to Bermuda, that was outlawed in the UK, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and one other sad part about it, Mr. Speaker, is that this chief occupant of the largest house on Langton Hill, who initiated the investigation of Dr. Brown, meets on a regular basis with the Commissioner of Police, the DPP, and the Chief Justice. It almost takes me back to Reverend Monk's case, reading the history, when he went before the courts and he had the father, the son was the prosecutor, and another relative here, and Monk called them the Father, Son, and the Unholy Ghost. This is the same group that is persecuting and trying to prosecute Dr. Brown for something that is commonplace in the UK. And I'm going to repeat this because I said it before. And yes, let it be a broken record to some. But they give contributions to political parties in the UK and get government contracts. Now, I'm not saying this happens here, but it happens out there. It's public knowledge. But it's okay. But when they come to Bermuda, it's got to be a different law for our people, because they want to control. And we know what it's all about. They really are trying to control Dr. Brown because he brought the Burgess in, because he had a good relationship with the president or the chief of state of the United States. They didn't like that. And they thought they should have been told. But immigration doesn't fall under the chief occupant's purview. It falls under the immigration minister. That's why Colonel Birch was there, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker. And then, you know, when it comes to shootings in Bermuda, gang shootings, and everybody blames the minister. They blame Minister Ming. Now, let me say this, Mr. Speaker. Minister Ming is not in charge of not one policeman in Bermuda. Oh, no, I'm sorry. Yes, she is in charge of one policeman in Bermuda, backed up by their son, who's about 7'7". But putting that aside, outside of inside of working hours, Minister Ming is not in charge of one policeman in Bermuda. She doesn't direct them. She can't tell them what to do. She can suggest, but don't have to tell them. She can't tell them what to do. When we have complaints about the police, about what's happening in this country, that police, it's their work. Bermudians need to complain to the largest house on Langton Hill. They call it Government House because they are in charge of the police. I don't know whether to call them police force or police service, but they are in charge. The minister's not in charge. And then when it comes to gangs, the first thing they say, they look for Pastor Bean. Yes, Pastor Bean, let me say again, yes, it's a personal friend of mine. That's why I'm able to talk about this here, Mr. Speaker. And they want to know what's Pastor Bean. Well, the way they come across as if a shooting was to take place tonight, they call Pastor Bean. I'm saying, Pastor Bean, we're going to be shooting tonight. Will you come out and try to stop us? You don't know this, Mr. Speaker. You know, if you look at, I guess, between 2012 to 17 and beyond a bit that, and probably somewhat in our time, they hired a firm from, I think, New Jersey, from the USA. I think it was called John Jay College. And what they paid them, I think it was about 3 or 4 times what they paid Pastor Dean. And these folks doing here, like Pastor Bean is here, when he has been a shoot the site, but he goes down to the hospital and visit everybody out 4 hours in the night and in the morning. But why they try to, some things they don't know about Pastor Bean. For years, Pastor Bean has been assisting people to go overseas, or whether it's drugs or alcohol, into a rehabilitation center. Not financed by government. He was backed by a lovely white lady, a foundation that was friendly to Bermuda. And they paid for the rehabilitation. But there's sometimes, Pastor Bean, you try to get somebody else tonight or tomorrow, he had to go in his pockets and help pay. But that's what he's been doing for years. He's never told anybody. He don't come out in the public and say that. That's what he's done for years. No cost to this government. You complain about that. That's what he did, Mr. Speaker. And it's not happening like it used to because the lady has sadly passed away, Mr. Speaker. But that's what this lady, she had a great relationship with Pastor Bean, and Pastor Bean had a great relationship with her. We were able to do, Mr. Speaker. So if you want to complain about the shootings, complain to the largest house on Lincoln Hill. They are in charge of the police. Minister Ming is not in charge. Pastor Bean don't know when shootings will occur. He don't know. If he did know, I can assure you, he would be up there and try to stop it. That's what he would do, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I'm asking the chief occupant of Government House is to erase the racial disparity in the justice system. Stop this investigation of Dr. Brown. They can do it if they want to. But you know, her predecessors that came before her told her, oh, they named certain people you need to watch out for. I'm sure I'm on that list. It'd be nice to get me off that list, but I'm sure I'm on that list, Mr. Speaker. That's what we're hoping that they would do to stop it. And they must take responsibility. When I say they, the chief occupants of the largest house on Lincoln Hill, because it was Dr. Brown again in 2008 on 2 separate occasions went to that location, largest house on Lincoln Hill, to try to get assistance in here on this situation. And Mr. Speaker, I would venture, and it was denied by the chief occupant. But I can tell you, Mr. Speaker, if we had it was a different demographic was being shot at each other. We would have all sorts of experts down here, studies being done, and all that type of situation be going on. But because it's black on black crime, I guess they must say, okay, they're only killing themselves, less of them, whatever. I don't know. Sometimes I wonder. What we're asking these folks to do, some of them are embedded with this mistrust of blacks. We have far too many in Bermuda think that way. And let me say this, we have some good white folks, and they have suffered because they've been on the front lines. We had people in the United States killed, white people killed, walking alongside Dr. King, Martin Luther King, to eradicate poverty and all that racial stuff in America. So there are some very good white folks like blacks in this country that has a heart, that sees us as equal. But we have far too many that are not. Because in Bermuda, the same disparity, racial disparity in the justice systems continues, led by the chief occupant of Lincoln Hill. That's where it comes in, because they are the ones in charge of the police. They are in charge of the DPP. They are in charge of the Chief Justice, Mr. Speaker. And I would like to see come out of Government House some programs, not only to educate our young men, Let some money come from the FCU because they spent over $10 million investigating Dr. Bond. Why don't they give their $10 million back to us and let us educate our boys and girls in Bermuda and get them onto something worthwhile in their lives? That's what they should be doing, not trying to eliminate our folks and lock them out. That's what they do, Mr. Speaker. And right now we have the lowest, I think, one of the lowest prison populations ever had, Mr. Speaker. Our young men and women are not so bad, you know, Mr. Speaker. They ain't no different from anybody else. But let me finish the statement, Mr. Speaker.
Happy, I just looked at the clock. Even though you've been very good, you've got 5 seconds left.
Let me say, Martin Luther King says, silence is betrayal. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy.